The Wives of Bath by Wendy Holden. Chapter 1. Hugo peeled his face from the white-collared chest of an exceptionally pretty woman. His rush through the hospital was such that he had failed to consider that the corner he was heading for might have someone coming around it. "Sorry," he grinned at her, thinking that, actually, he wasn't sorry at all. It wasn't every evening he got to bury his nose in something as luscious as... He squinted at her badge, Dr. M. Watson, consultant pediatrician. "Don't worry," the doctor replied, slightly frostily. "You're not really called Dr. Watson, are you?" Hugo looked her up and down flirtatiously, taking in the glossy black hair and large dark eyes. Confidently, he waited for his own handsome face and commanding height to have the usual effect on women. To his surprise, he waited in vain. "Are you looking for somewhere in particular?" the doctor asked. Her manner was polite, but nonsense. "I'm here for a class." Hugo maintained his expectant smile. She'd crack eventually. They always did. An eternal class. Dr. Watson did not crack, however. Instead, she gave him directions. After several more twists through the grey lino maze, Hugo finally found the door he was in search of. He knocked and opened it to find Amanda sitting tense and annoyed amid a horseshoe of people, an empty orange plastic chair next to her. "Sorry I'm late," Hugo muttered. In front of the horseshoe stood a thin-faced woman with wire-framed glasses and a bright, toothy smile. There was, Hugo thought, something over-eager, manic even, about the way her eyes shone through her lenses. "Good evening," she said. "My name is Lottie. Yes, you are late, but better late than never, as you say in this country, I think." "Dutch," Hugo guessed, as, bracelets rattling on her outstretched arms, the woman came towards him. He found himself bustled to a table and asked his name, which was then written on a badge and stuck on his lapel. Thus labeled, Hugo was free to stumble to the seat beside his wife. He looked swiftly about him. The sight of so many pregnant women made him nervous. Their stomachs looked strained beyond endurance, about to burst any second. He imagined a huge cannon bang, a 21-term salute. Lottie beamed around at the horseshoe. "It's good to see you all here tonight. You know, I hope you find these classes useful, not just for information about baby and bathing, but also to make friends. You know, couples who meet at these classes sometimes stay friends for years." Hugo stared fixedly at the floor. Nothing made his toes curl like forced social interaction. Like that bit in church when you had to offer each one a sign of peace. "Now," Lottie instructed, lenses glinting, "I'd like everyone to stand up one by one and introduce yourselves to the class. Please," she gestured at the person nearest, who rose to her feet. This woman's name badge read Mel. She was short and pugnacious looking, with cropped grey hair. Hugo's glance flicked over her to rest approvingly on the woman she was next to. A very pretty, very pregnant redhead with creamy skin, faraway eyes, and an air of dreamy gentleness. She looked vulnerable, he thought, trying to catch her eye. This must be why her mother was with her. "I'm Mel," the gray haired woman announced, glancing dismissively down at her name badge, as if to acknowledge she was stating the obvious. She gestured to the redhead. "And this is Saxia, my partner." Hugo stopped winking at the redhead and gave her a look of comic reproach. "That's great, Mel," Lottie beamed. "And can you tell the class what you do?" "Saxia's a home office pathologist. I'm an organic gardener." "Baby's sure going to be lucky with the vegetables, ha ha. Nothing out of the jars in your house, ha ha." "No," said Mel shortly and sat down. Next, it was Amanda's turn. She bounced up despite her bump, a dazzling red lipstick green stretched rigidly across her face. "My name is Amanda Fine," she breathily declared. "Although it is more likely you will have heard of me in my professional capacity as Amanda Hardwick." She paused expectantly. "Are you that woman off the bill?" A thick-set man next to Saxia eventually hazarded. Amanda tightened her lips. "I'm quite a well-known journalist," she corrected him, as Hugo felt his fists tighten and his shoes ball up with embarrassment. "Very well known in the States. But I don't suppose," she added, looking around disparagingly, "that anyone here ever gets Style magazine." "I do sometimes," offered a woman with heavy makeup, shiny skin, a large nose, and wild brown hair. Her name badge read Laura. "You mean the one that comes with the Sunday Times?" "No," Amanda said freezingly. "I do not mean that one. I mean the extremely prestigious and influential American one of the same name." Hugo was surprised at the mention of the magazine. Earlier that year, and in rather mysterious circumstances, Amanda had resigned from Style. On principle, she had told him. A disagreement with the legal department or something. He hadn't realized until then she had had any principles. Her complete lack of scruples had been one of her attractions initially. Lottie's voice broke into his thoughts. "Well, it's all very interesting anyway, Amanda. Thank you." Amanda sat down and gave Hugo a bad-tempered nudge. He saw, staring at his lapel, dismayed. He now saw that, positioned at a drunken angle on his suit, the crumpled white name badge read Yogi. Lottie had obviously misread Hugo, but you probably didn't get many Hugos in Holland. "Yogi," Lottie trilled, inadvertently rubbing it in. "Your turn now, please." Crossly, Hugo got to his feet. He had assumed that the covert glances from the rest of the class, particularly from the women, had been approving and possibly flirtatious. The realization he was the object of amusement was both unusual and unpleasant. Well, he began uncomfortably. "The first thing I would say is that this badge isn't strictly accurate. My name's not Yogi." "Speak up, Yogi," urged Lottie from the front. "We can't hear you." "My name's not Yogi," Hugo bleated. "It's Hugo. Hugo Fine, bloody hell." Why hadn't he just stayed in the pub and ignored his mobile? So Amanda had rung even as he raised the pint glass to his lips, demanding to know why he wasn't in the antenatal class. "I understand you've recently moved from London, Yogi." Lottie's stream rolled on. "Would you like to tell us why?" Good question, Hugo thought. The same one he asked himself most mornings. He suppressed a sigh and affected breeziness. Oh, all the usual stuff. Better quality of life and all that. And so much better for children, Amanda energetically interrupted from beside him. Family life in the country, we thought. Real life, quality life. There was a murmur of agreement from the others at this. Dandling angelic infants in the dappling sunlight under the apple blossom, that sort of thing. Amanda flashed her red grimace again. The murmur stuttered slightly. There were glances of surprise. So we're both thrilled to be here, Amanda finished, as graciously as a visiting royal. Aren't we, darling? Hugo flinched at her violent nudge and nodded faintly. In point of fact, and as Amanda well knew, he was not at all thrilled to be here. He had resisted fiercely her idea of moving out of London and into the countryside. An urbanite to the core, he had a terror of the deep middle of nowhere with its dark nights and awful stillness. But Amanda, once pregnant, had insisted that her city days were over. The compromise was Bath, as well as halfway house between big city and rolling ruraldom. It had the additional benefit of being somewhere Hugo had actually heard of. It also had good London train links, not that he used them. He had imagined commuting to his old job as an estate agent in Islington, but his wife, it turned out, had decided his city days were over as well. As a result, he was now the wage slave of one Neil Dustard, boss of a small Bath property farm. He had seemed reasonable enough at first, the only agent Hugo had applied to that had taken him out of the pub to discuss prospects. At the time, this had seemed evidence of the sort of laid-back friendliness that corresponded to brilliance in business. What it turned out to be was evidence of the alcoholism already hinted at by Neil's red face. As a result of which, his character was as unstable as his company, which Hugo soon discovered to be as mired in lack of ideas as it was in lack of ambition. And he was mired there too now. Bugger Amanda for making him move here, and bugger himself for letting her. He turned back into the discussion. Of course, Amanda was saying to the class, obviously Bath is a bit backward compared to London, but it's really not bad at all to look at. Quite pretty, in fact, and so cheap. We've got a huge family house here for the price of our flat, but then it was in Notting Hill. The rest of the class was staring stonily at Amanda. Hugo clenched his toes again. Why did she have to say these things? The flat had not been in W11 for a start, W10 and a half at the most, not quitting Hill as he had thought of it. Nor were Bath House prices cheap. Cheaper, yes, but hardly bargain basement. Hugo, thanks to his profession, knew this before they moved there. But it had taken time before Amanda, with stormy reluctance, had accepted that the 5-story Royal Crescent mansion she had imagined owning was way beyond their means. The house within them, number 4 Fitzherbert Place, was a distinct cut below the one she had initially refused to countenance. This had suited Hugo, who had no wish to live there either. Then suddenly Amanda, apparently accepting their financial limitations, had become full of enthusiasm for the fact that it was Georgian and bursting with original features according to the estate agent's details. Something, possibly original, Hugo thought, had certainly burst through the staircase wall and left a large damp stain. Other period features included a grimy fanlight, tall, difficult to clean windows, and high, cracked ceilings. Basically, it was a battered, three-floored terrace on the side of a hill on the edge of the city. It was, Hugo felt, a mess. But it says here that it's got huge potential for refurbishment. Amanda stabbed the estate agent details with a manicured forefinger. That's estate agent speak for complete bomb site. But Hugo knew he argued in vain. When eventually, inevitably, Amanda prevailed and they bought it, he was left with the uncomfortable feeling of being the bitter bit. Just as uncomfortably he was recalling all this, there was a commotion at the class door and a man came in. Lottie trained her glasses on him. "Hi, welcome, come in. You're a bit late, but never mind." She bustled over to do the business with the name badges. "We had to wait for a bus," the man said defensively. The newcomer was, Hugo realized, extravagantly handsome, from the Cherokee cheekbones to the dark hair curling carelessly around the base of the muscular neck. His were the type of film hero good looks that aroused resentment in the most relaxed of men. And Hugo, standing up amid sniggering strangers, sporting a silly name badge, was feeling far from laid back at the moment. "A bus?" echoed Amanda disdainfully. The long-haired man looked at her. "We don't do cars," he said, witheringly. "We believe they're damaging to the planet." Lottie glanced delightfully up from her sheet of stickers. "Hey, me too. I don't do cars either. A bicycle everywhere." She brandished her marker at the bus fan. "What's your name?" "Jake." "My wife Alice is here too, but she's in the loo throwing up at the moment." He grinned at the women. "Guess you know how it is, eh, girls?" Hugo's stomach tensed in dislike at the easy populism. The woman, however, looked charmed. There was a sympathetic murmur from all except Amanda, who looked disgusted. She did not, Hugo knew, appreciate being reminded of pregnancy's less glamorous aspects. Jake was now looking at Hugo, or more precisely, his name badge. There was a mocking gleam in his eye. "Yogi, huh? As in bear or as in Maharishi Mahesh?" "Neither," Hugo replied icily, suddenly loathing him. "My name is actually Hugo. I'm not sure Lottie heard properly." Lottie was now fixing Jake's badge on his broad chest. Her manner was half investiture, half flirtation, and entirely distracted. "Do go on, Yogi," she gasped, flushed. "You were saying what it is you do." Hugo shifted to his other foot. "I'm an estate agent." Was that a snort coming from Jake's direction? He looked challengingly at the new arrival, but Jake avoided his gaze, seemingly absorbed in somewhat sneering contemplation of Hugo's pinstriped suit. "Thank you, Yogi. You can sit down now." Lottie's glasses flashed spectacularly around before being drawn magnetically back to Jake. "Jake," she fluttered, "why don't you tell us a little about yourself?" Jake, who had sat down, rose slowly up again. There was a stirring among the women as he unfolded himself to his full impressive height. Hugo noted with irritation how confidently he stood in his battered lumberjack shirt and scruffy jeans. Handsome head tilted slightly back, he seemed to ease to an almost aggressive extent, rolling gently but constantly from one foot to the other. "I'd like to say, before we start," Jake looked around with an intense, deep-set gaze, "that I, for one, am not here just for decoration. I think we fathers should take an active part in everything to do with the birth. I mean, we're mothers too, in a way, and I personally don't have a problem with feeling that. Ecstasy lit Lottie's face. That's right, Jake, she gasped, eyes brimming behind her glasses. If only more men were like you, or more men felt like you. Nauseous, Hugo thought, was the only way to describe how he personally felt. Sliding a glance around the room, he divined similar sentiments in the other men present. Their expressions ranged from miserable to murderous. The women, however, were audibly sighing with admiration, and no more so than Lottie. Tell us what you do, Jake, she invited. I run a magazine. But that's marvelous. Lottie threw out an excited arm in Amanda's direction. Amanda here was just telling us about the magazine she works on. Jake looked Amanda doubtfully up and down. Can't imagine it's the same sort of thing. Yours is all celebrities, sex, and makeup, right? Sounds great, interrupted Laura, evidently anxious to atone for her Sunday Times gaffe. Amanda favored her with a tight smile. It's a glossy, if that's what you mean, she told Jake. Is yours a glossy? He shook his luscious locks. Not likely. It's printed on eco-sustainable paper. It's a recycling magazine. A recycling magazine? Exclaimed Lottie in delight. Recycling. Jake's Calvin Klein ad, perfect brow, grew together in irritation. It's called Get Trashed. Available from health food shops, Soil Association approved organic groceries, and by subscription from me. He looked around challengingly. Recycling, Lottie clasped her hands together. A very important subject, isn't it, everyone? Heads nodded, Hugo's included. For what it was worth, he had religiously washed out his bottles and cans and posted them through the appropriate holes in the recycling container near the non-quitting hill flat. Once, after a particularly lavish party, Amanda had written to the council suggesting they provide containers with holes for magnums. So far as he knew, she had never received a reply. Our latest issue, Jake informed the class, shows you how to build a house made entirely of reusable waste. Hugo snorted and tried to turn it into a cough. He was rewarded with a bright smile from Lottie. You know, Yogi, maybe you ought to get together with Jake. You're an estate agent, right? Her emphasis on estate and agent. A house made of reusable waste? Hugo mused, as politely as he could manage. I'm not sure Dan and Dustard have handled anything like that before, and I don't think they are likely to, Jake returned smartly. Unless you accept your commission in lets, that is. In what? Hugo asked, his polite tones now under some strain. Jake's expression was pained with impatience. Local exchange tokens. Another of our interests is phasing out conventional payment methods in favor of trading skills or benefits in kind. I'd have to get back to you on that. Hugo imagined Neil Dustard contemplating such a proposal. He felt the start of another snigger and tried to turn it into a sneeze. Next to introduce himself was Stocky Jim, who had imagined Amanda to be in the bill. He was a carpenter originally from St. Helens. How marvelous, gushed Amanda. Is that in the Caribbean? Jim looked at her in amazement. Merseyside. Next came Laura. Hugo looked at her with interest. Besides thick makeup, she had a wide gap between her front teeth, giving her smile a body appearance. She was wearing a lot of hot pink. Hugo wondered where her other half was. He's too busy to come, Laura admitted when Lottie brightly asked the same question. No father of a baby should be too busy to come, Jacob opined loudly. It's his duty. Fergus works in advertising in London, Laura snapped back. Jake rolled his deep-set eyes in disgust. The door opened and a blonde woman came in. The room rippled with interest as it realized that this, presumably, was Jake's wife, the one who also presumably had been in the loo all this time. She was, Hugo decided, rather less glamorous than her partner. She was thin, despite her pregnancy, and lanky. Cleanliness seemed her most distinguishing feature. She looked almost carbolically well scrubbed in maternity jeans and a white t-shirt, with a long calm face completely devoid of makeup. She looked, Hugo thought, extremely honest. Yet, however understated it seemed to him, the woman's appearance had had an electric effect on someone else in the room. Amanda, beside him, was breathing short and fast. It can't be, he had hissed to herself. My wife Alice, Jake was announcing. Feeling better? He asked her solicitously. Not exactly, Hugo guessed, puzzled. For Alice was staring at Amanda, her calm face registering unpleasant shock. Lottie had picked up none of the drama. Tell us about yourself, she beamed toothily at Alice. Are you working at the moment? Hugo heard Amanda breathing heavily. He sensed that she was very interested in Alice's answer. Frankly, after this build-up, he was interested himself. No, Alice stuttered. Then recovering, she added in a clear, soft voice, but until recently, I was in the legal department of a New York magazine company. Hugo's head exploded with the pealing of loud bells. So that was the connection. Style magazine. Was this mousy woman then involved in Amanda's mysterious resignation? With her scrubbed face and mild air, she hardly looked the type to take on his formidable wife. Lottie was looking expectantly around the class. Okay, right. Now, we all know each other. Let's get down to business. Does everyone here know what a uterus looks like? End of chapter 1.